and add an opinion with that voice,
Yeah,
add an attitude
a
opinion.
heightened attitude and opinion, because it's not enough to just have the alarm clock, but I mean, it could be a different alarm clock. It could be an alarm clock that is a little bit more like, oh my, oh my, oh my, if that's how you feel,
Okay.
where maybe your alarm clock has a different sound. My alarm clock is a little bit of a snob, oh, 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 I see you're going to put those socks on. Oh, oh.
Greetings, everyone! Come on in and have a seat up front for the Funny Muscle Podcast. If you're here, then you're looking to learn how to create laughs like a pro. So please help me welcome to the stage your co-host to help you do that, economics professor and open micer Chris Stifler and comedian turned author Mike Lucas.
So last time we kind of dissected like three of those heightening devices. We did bait and switch, funny specifics, and cut forward too. So I thought today maybe we would do cut back to anthropomorphize and contrast. If we can dive into three examples and then kind of you explain the background of how they work, the mechanics of how they work.
But yeah, okay. Well, the anthropomorphizing is one of my favorite things to do. That's where you give it a voice, and to me, there's so much. It's so fertile to begin to imagine things coming alive, and then it's not just about giving something a voice, but you're also giving it an opinion. You're giving it a take, and typically, the take is a mocking take, or it's I guess, sarcastic take, but it's sort of a different way to comment on yourself when you can give, if I'm giving the glass I'm drinking out of an opinion about my breath, it becomes funny, because instead of just going, boy, I have bad breath, it could be like the cup that I'm drinking out of is like, whoa, buddy, you should scrape your tongue before you put your mouth on me. This is going to take too long in the dishwasher, and I don't like that, whatever, and then you have all of a sudden that glass of water, it starts talking to the bottle of water, and it's like, oh, I know he's got his lips on me, and I could smell it too, or whatever. And then now it can be a comment on bad breath or whatever, or a comment on somebody who backwashes, like that could be the idea that I hate it when people backwash it might be a fun premise. Now I have a glass, I have maybe the ice cubes are also chiming in. We don't like it either. The secondary liquid sticks to us, and now it reflects on what we're like. We're just ice cubes. We like to be clean. We don't like the secondary swill, whatever. but so when you anthropomorphize, it's what I was funny. One of the clients I worked with tried to anthropomorphize the idea that she had a sweater that she complimented somebody on, and that person took it off and gave it to her, and then she tried to anthropomorphize that idea, and she did it in a way that didn't give the sweater a voice. And then one way I helped her was to help her realize that if you anthropomorphize something, you really want to give it a voice, and that's kind of an act out. So if you're not an act out comic, an act out comic is somebody who says the joke and then takes you to that place and does the conversation that happens based on that scenario that you set up. And a lot of comedians enjoy doing act out, so it's not a stretch for most people to add an anthropomorphize into it. Now, some people are one liners, and some people are, they don't do act out, they're just joke tellers, and so those people probably wouldn't do a lot of anthropomorphizing. But I was a big act out comic. I with my improvisation training and my acting and my facial expressions, I loved to, like, it wasn't enough for me to tell the joke. I had to bring you to the, and that's what I always did before I ever was ever a comedian. I would bring people to the scenario and paint that picture through dialogue. And so that's the thing about anthropomorphizing. You have to really give it a voice, and not just a voice, but a personality, and not just a personality, but a heightened personality, and an attitude. And the attitude is what's really important, because the attitude is what you can heighten. If my bed is, or my alarm clock, the bit that I brought up for this one was my alarm clock. And my alarm clock, I said, my alarm clock is a dick. I can't remember how I set it up in the act, but the essential part of that was my alarm clock is kind of a dick. It in the morning, and is it meh, Man, get your ass out of bed. You got to go to work and you hate your job. Now all of a sudden, instead of it turns into now it's laughing at me.
Mhm.
Your boss is incompetent, but he's completely in charge of you. You're going to sit in traffic, backed up morning. What are you doing rolling over? I know you can still hear me. Your life sucks. You took the first shitty job out of school. And now you got to go there for the rest of your snooze.
Here, let me play that.
When I worked at AT&T, that clock was a dick, man. It was on my ass every morning. It knew it. It knew I hated my job. It was like, man, get your ass out of bed. You gotta go to work and you can't stand your job. Your boss is incompetent, but he's completely in charge of you. You're gonna sit in traffic, backed up morning traffic. What are you doing rolling over? I know you could still hear me, Mike. Your life sucks because you took the first shitty job out of college, didn't you? Now you gotta go there for the rest of your life. Well, start today, you bad choice making lazy son of a snooze.
And now that's a frog bank. I'm snoozing a voice that I don't want to hear anymore that's mocking me for the choices I've made. So now that bit climaxes into an applause break typically because I've heightened, and then I've got a good line at the end that's a great frog bank, which is the snooze, which is basically saying, shut the fuck up, dude. And or shut the fuck up, person who's judging me. But it's not a person, it's an alarm clock. And so the anthropomorphizing heightening device is you can overuse it a lot. If everything in your world talks, now that becomes kind of old. But if you can pepper that in your show, because I have also my bed, because I would do a bed seduction where my bed was seducing me and my alarm clock was a dick. So there was two opposing kind of, one was really liking me and wanting me more, the other one was mocking me for my life choices. And so it was a nice contrast between those two things, and those fit nicely in sort of my bit about mornings.
Okay, so I wrote on my card, the cards I do from your book, I wrote, give it a mouth, make it talk, give human qualities to non-human things.
Yeah.
But my misconception initially was, because you're a super act out guy and have really good impressions and you have different voices and you have different pitches, but you can anthropomorphize something and don't be an impressionist.
No, you don't. And that's one thing that one of the heightening devices is impersonation. And I try to make that point in the book, which is an impersonation can be, I'm doing a spot on impersonation of a voice that we all recognize. So, Judy. Oh, that's Clark Gable or whatever. I'm just being funny.
You Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah. Oh, I get no respect. Yeah, and so you can, and then you're rewarded by the audience when you are incredibly accurate with that impersonation. Frank Caliendo is wonderful at that. I used to open for him quite a bit, and you watch him, and it's fantastic to hear somebody take you to, now all of a sudden John Madden is in the room, and he heightens John Madden's silliness that he's noticed. And he does that with all his impersonations. Frank Caliendo is brilliant, man. The dude, like he doesn't just do impressions. He heightens his impressions and puts those people in different scenarios. And then he examines how he does the impression. So he almost is in a joking way teaching you how to do the impression or how he does it. So there's almost a class involved in how he does it. So there's so many different ways that, compared to say Rich Little, who just did the impression and did a pretty standard imitation of what the other guy does, whereas Caliendo just takes it to, he really heightens that. So when you watch someone like Caliendo do it, you think to yourself, well, I can never impersonate someone that closely, so I certainly would never try and embarrass myself compared to say Frank. But I would do all my anthropomorphizing when I was opening up for Frank, and it was never a conflict, and it was never like I was trying to be him or be like him, because I would do voices of my girlfriend or my aunt or my mom or like you said, the airplane tray that's in front of you. So then you could just do any voice you want. You could just give it a voice, meaning don't make it your voice, but something else. Maybe it's a little deeper, maybe it's a little higher, maybe you're doing it a little slower, or you're doing it a little faster. And even that, it's my voice, but it's just giving the thing an attitude, and that's what becomes funny. It's not saying that it sounds like Bette Midler, and now we all hear Bette Midler in the room. That's a real true impersonation. I like to impersonate things that no one can call me on. If I do an impersonation of my wallet, geez, Mike, I'm empty again. Like you don't know if that's what my wallet sounds like. You're not going to go, wait a minute, I thought your wallet was different. I thought it was a different kind of
I,
leather than what you're
I
just
thought it spoke
thinking.
German. Yeah, that's
Right?
funny.
Yeah, and I thought your wallet had a chain. I didn't hear a chain in that voice or whatever. And it's a safe impersonation. So I like to say that you can impersonate things and people that nobody knows with whatever voice you want. And like for your act, Chris, you're like, I watch you up there, and I think you could do some good voices in it. And I think what that does is it breaks up your voice so that we get to see different pictures being painted with your voice, but without ever you having to do a impersonation of a celebrity, because people think impersonations are only celebrity impersonations. But yeah, so to me, like that's how I help advise people in terms of anthropomorphizing is you can give anything a voice, and the voice is up to you, and it doesn't even have to be a silly voice. Like even if you just the idea of an upright table talking is funny enough if you commit to it and heighten it, and then call it back, where now later in the flight of your bit, in the bit that's talking about that flight, now that voice can come back that you already did, and it can be that upright table or whatever, like what's it called, the
Your table.
tray table, thank you. Now all of a sudden that tray table becomes a character in your piece, and it can have another comment later, after the PDA is done and you guys are all smoking a cigarette. The tray table could want a cigarette too. Hey, I was involved in that. I'd like to relax a little bit. And so that's a real fertile area that I think a lot of people don't delve into because they're afraid that they don't do voices, so then it's going to come across as inadequate. But that's not true. Like you can do anything, give anything a voice. And then what's fun is to picture, what do different things sound like. What does a piece of gum sound like, compared to what a glass of orange juice sounds like, and what would those two things say to each other? You're monopolizing the mouth. Gum,
And then
easy, juice,
because
easy. I'm going to wear out soon. You're going to be there for the rest of the day. Now those two things can begin to talk, and then you can go back to my voice, and now we've seen in our mind what this conversation might be like, and it's a ridiculous conversation, but if it makes sense for the bit you're doing and it helps to heighten the point you're making, I say that's a lot of fun, and I say that's worth doing.
but the conversation about some homework or low hanging fruit homework, kind of the tiny habits type thing. I think he told me the one homework piece of advice was just to like anthropomorphize something in the room. Or if you're
Yeah.
standing in line at the post office, like what is the postcard saying, looking at this line? Or so how did you articulate that? Give me a homework or easy 5 minute like thing to practice when I'm in traffic or
Again, it's not just about giving something a voice. You're giving it a voice with an attitude. You're giving it you're giving something that doesn't have an opinion, and that opinion is basically your own heightened opinion that you would think from its point of view, what it would think. So, my shoes might have an opinion about my stinky feet, and so if I want to do a bit about stinky feet, it'd be funny to have my shoes and my socks have a conversation, where they're talking like, oh my God, we gotta get this guy in the bathtub more often, and then the bathtub is like, whoa, I don't want that to be involved in that, and now there's a three-way conversation where they're trying to work out a plan to get me cleaner because I just have a big guy stinky feet. So in terms of homework, like the fun thing to me would be to, when you walk out throughout your day, to begin to just like notice things, give it an attitude, give it a voice and an attitude and an opinion that's heightened, and it's commenting on you and on something about yourself that you want to mock or that you want to heighten about like an attitude, you know. So for me, a hairbrush might have a voice, and I'm bald, so you know, the attitude of that hairbrush might be like someone who is disappointed and is unsatisfied, you know, like an unsatisfied woman, like, you know, oh Mike, you know, I just sit here on your dresser and I'm never used because your hair is so whatever. And then my razor blade can be like, oh my God, I would kill it if it was you, more you than me. But all I do is cut this stuff down, but you can still see the bald spots. Jesus, I feel inadequate. And now, you know, the hairbrush is longing and the razor blade is tired. So now those are two attitudes that those objects in my world. I'm just looking around my room. That's why I did that one. But you know, that's what I would say would be fun to begin to start doing, because eventually what you can do is you can, when you're writing a comedy piece, you can figure out what are the objects in that comedy piece, and then you could start giving a voice to that. But in your daily life, when you're looking around, when you wake up, when you walk, like you said, if you're in the bank and you're in line, it's funny to begin to picture what these things are thinking and saying based on your own prejudices and your own fears and all that. Because really, comedy is, you know, we're mocking our struggles. And that's the whole point of comedy is life is difficult. And so when you can have fun with those difficulties, that's the point of a stand-up comedian, is we bring up these struggles, we mock them, so that the next time those people who are in the audience encounter that struggle, they remember our bit and then they laugh about it, because they go, oh my God, my hairbrush has a whole different attitude than Mike's. My hairbrush is just completely filled with hair all the time. And it's like, well, I'm just full of hair and I can barely get my teeth, you know, because I have long, thick hair, and that. So now your hairbrush has a different attitude. Now, what if your hairbrush and my hairbrush meet up? You know, I'd kill to be you. You know, oh no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Trust me, it's my mouth is full all the time, whatever. But you like, to me, that's where your imagination can begin to take place. And then when you begin to write your material, you'll see more often spots where those things can be anthropomorphized.
And anthropomorphize is not the joke. It's the tool to heighten the joke, right? You still have to have a good misdirection, a good premise, a good turn, misdirection, punchline. But
Exactly.
I'm seeing anthropomorphize in these heightening devices at the end. You once you have a good 20-second joke, you heighten it then with, is that, so
Yeah,
you
I
can't just
think
go up there and just do impressions. You can
no,
just do
no,
impressions of the
like my
stool.
alarm clock. I'm already talking about, like, I don't like mornings, you know, not because it's too early, but because my alarm clock's a dick. So now I've kind of, you know, like I can't remember if that's the way I set that up, but you know, the premise is mornings, and the setup is I don't like mornings because, you know, we might think the normal route is because it's early, because I didn't get enough sleep and all that. And then the shift, or the twist, is that it's because my alarm clock is a dick. Now that alone gets a laugh, because you know, how can an alarm clock be a dick? I mean, that's sort of like an alarm clock is an alarm clock. It's just a piece of inanimate material. But now, if I just said my alarm clock's a dick and then I moved on to the next joke, it might get an okay laugh. But now I'm like, you know, with the blueprint, how big of a dick is my alarm clock? Well, it's so big of a dick. You know, we don't say any of this obviously, but it's so big of a dick that it starts to comment on my life. It starts to tear me apart, basically like my ex-girlfriend might, kind of a thing, you know, or a kid who's not proud of his dad or her dad, or a parent who's upset with, you know, however you want to play that. But for me, it was kind of like a buddy who's kind of drunk, who's mocking me, you know, you know, you're a loser, you're a loser, buddy. And so then the voice came out of my impersonation of my alarm clock, because I had, at that time, I had an alarm clock that was like that. It was that kind of an alarm clock. And so I just extended that and heightened it on stage one night and gave it an attitude. And so yeah, so it's not, you can't just go up there and go, here's what my alarm clock sounds like. You have to still use the blueprint to create a premise, to establish a premise, to create a setup that misdirects the audience into thinking you're going to go a normal direction, and then you're going to heighten it with something like that my alarm clock is a dick. And that's, you know, that itself is funny, but then you have to heighten that and play the frog bank game where you combine those worlds over and over again, and until it gets ridiculous to where I, but it's a natural conclusion, because how do you shut your alarm clock up? You just snooze it, and that's what we all do. And so I'm building to that. And if I didn't snooze that alarm clock, it'd be very disappointing to the crowd, because they're all waiting for it. They're expecting it. And then when I hit it, oh, they clap because they're like, yes, he did it. Yeah. And so it was a real satisfaction for the crowd for me to do that. But it wouldn't do that if I didn't set it up with a real joke at first. And that's the mistake I think I was making as a young comic, is I would go straight into the voice of the alarm clock without doing the blueprint, where I'm really setting up a premise, I'm establishing a premise, setting up a normal expectation, and then twisting that with a misdirection and a heighten that they weren't expecting, and that didn't occur to them.
Okay, so add the opinion, add voices to an inanimate object, and add an opinion with that voice.
Yeah,
Add an attitude opinion.
heightened attitude and opinion, because it's not enough to just have the alarm clock, but I mean, it could be a different alarm clock. It could be an alarm clock that is a little bit more like, oh my, oh my, oh my, if that's how you feel,
Okay.
where maybe your alarm clock has a different sound. My alarm clock is a little bit of a snob, oh, 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 I see you're going to put those socks on. Oh, you didn't wear pajama bottoms. Oh, whatever. However, it makes sense for what your joke is. My joke was about this, as a comedian, I just didn't like getting up early because I was usually drunk the night before, and I had to get up early for radio. So a lot of that comedy came out of that, where I was finding, the clumsy Aspie hole was trying to blame the world for his own problem. Like I was hungover and I was lazy because I didn't want to get up, and so, but I wanted to blame my alarm clock and my bed for that problem, not my own choices.
You have to really commit to that. Like I've seen stand up, open micers that don't commit to their voice, and it's like worse because
Yeah,
they are half trying to do it, and they don't, and that better off not doing it, I think, when if you don't fully commit.
exactly. And the audience knows that, and sometimes when I was doing that bit, especially in the beginning, the audience is a little hesitant on whether or not they're going to follow you that way. But then, because they saw that I was going somewhere with it, then they came along with me and loved it. But yeah, a lack of commitment is worse than not doing it at all, because now it looks like you don't believe in what you're doing. So if you're going to give something a voice, you got to give it an attitude. You got to give it a direction where it's heading, and then you've got to give it almost like a climax to what it ends up being, so that it's got a natural ending to it. It's a little story, really. There's a little story that, once upon a time, my alarm clock woke me up and was being a real jerk to me, and here's how it ended.
It's just funny to see how quickly your brain works because you've been doing this so long. But the attitude thing I think is really good for students hearing is to give it an attitude, give it an opinion before you
Yeah,
anthropomorphize.
and that's real important, because the voice is just part of the tool, but you have to give it an attitude and opinion, and you have to heighten that. Like, that's heightening is so key in this world of comedy. Is you're just piling on, and not just piling on, but you're making it bigger and taking it to another level, which is in improv, that's yes anding, where you're not just agreeing with the thing, you're also giving it some new life, giving it some new depth, giving it some more excitement, more whatever it is, more of it. And that's the key to good comedy and good improvisation, according to Viola Spolin, who's like the godmother of improv. And she says that all improv is transformation. You're taking it from an initial idea, and because you're heightening and yes anding and agreeing and adding on, you transform something that we all recognize into something new that we didn't recognize or expect. And that's the transformation that stand-up comedy does as well. You start with a bit about a date that you're taking, and now you've transformed it into an attitude that the car has. Even like even the car gets that you're a loser, dude. And so now we've transformed the idea of a bad date into a general opinion about this guy's ability to please a woman. You could take that idea of that car, and who's the next owner going to be? Is it a relief for them? Maybe the next owner is a woman, and he's like, oh my God, thank goodness we're on the other side of it. And you could just, there's a lot of different places that your friend could could take that thing, the car could whisper to her as she's leaving, as she shuts the door, the car could, whisper to her and go, "It's not you, trust me, it's him. It's not the first time this has happened. Just go, run, lady, run."
Get out of here.
He tends to chase people, whatever. But like there could be, all of that, depending on what I don't know what the setup is, or I don't know how she does her whole act, but that's how I look at those moments. Is it has to transform itself into something bigger and better and weirder and crazier than it was, and then hopefully when you work that out on stage, like a lot of times this doesn't happen right away. You do these bits over. That's why like nobody does their Netflix special right out of the gate. Like Bill Burr he works his act for a year before he does a new act every year. So there's 11 months and 2 weeks worth of going over this bit over and over and over again before he actually shows us what it is. And in that process, he is adding on to things. He's adding callbacks. He's adding heightens to it. He's figuring out where is this going and why. And then what we see is the end result of that. But the process of doing that is that's his work at the comedy clubs when he does open mics or when he just does a regular week headlining, doing new material. And that's the fun of watching a guy like him. I mean, he set the bar for all of us to hire because, and not just him, but all the other comics that do a new special every year. Brian Regan was that way. Jim Gaffigan is that way. Sarah Silverman was that way. Wanda Sykes was that way. They're when you go to watch them, you love them so much. You kind of want to watch. It's like a band. You want to hear their old hits, but also you want to hear their new hits. And sometimes you just want to hear their new hits because you're so used to the old ones. You've heard them over and over again that, you want to hear a little bit of that, but then you want that, but with new details. And that's what these people do, these comedians who are really good that do these hour specials, but they're working on that. And that's part of that work is you're trying to figure out, where is this thing going? Where is my heightening heading to?
Do you have your second book ahead of you, or can you just give us some examples, some famous examples people might know that are anthropomorphizing?
Okay, yeah, I got some good examples here. Okay, so the second book I used Mitch Hedberg. I like waffles. Waffles are like pancakes with syrup traps. A waffle says to the syrup, "Hold on now, you ain't going anywhere. Don't even be trying to creep down the side. Just rest in these squares. If one square is full, move on to the next one. When you hit the butter, split up." So now he's given a voice to the waffle, having a conversation with the syrup. And so to me, that's beautiful because, Mitch Hedberg doesn't always do a lot of those kinds of things, but when he does it, it's great. You love to hear him. His voice now is the voice of the waffle. And I like it because the waffle has an attitude that, and it sort of reflects Mitch's attitude, which is like, well, yeah, it's all good, man. Just, like make your way through. And so it like, now whenever anyone watches or eats a waffle with syrup and you've heard that bit, you almost want to you anthropomorphize that syrup yourself because of Mitch taught you how to do that. And then you can almost take it to further lengths. The syrup is, I'm sticky and I'm going to get on your best sweater and I'm going to be with you for the rest of your life, kind of thing. And now you can give that syrup a voice because he gave it a voice, but the first voice was simply about the instructions that it's giving, the waffle's giving to the syrup in terms of maneuvering around this landscape, this bumpy landscape. So that's the one I use in that one. And then Seinfeld does a great one where he talks about dry cleaning. And he's like, water ruins leather. What about cows and rain? They're wearing leather. And then I have cows are like at the front door, let us in. So now
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Is trying to protect his own leather, which is, pre-leather, but it's still leather. And now he gives that cow a voice. Cows don't talk, but in his act, a cow not only is talking, but it has an attitude. It's afraid that it's going to ruin its own jacket, which is its skin. So it's funny because now we see a cow and we get that it's wearing leather, number one, and number two, that the cow cares about its leather the way we care about our leather jacket. So to me, those are some good examples.
That's a good example of showing it doesn't need to be a whole long soliloquy or
No,
a long dialogue. It can be quickly like even the dog said like look out, or
yeah,
even my car's
right.
bumper said, "What are you doing?" Or yeah,
Well,
okay,
exactly. And Seinfeld isn't, he doesn't do a lot of really long act outs. He's more of a one
yeah,
line kind of guy. So if he does an anthropomorphize, he's going to do it quickly. But he still does it. And that's the point is, boy, those things peppered in at the right place are a real nice touch. And then he does it in his voice, let us in, whatever. I can't do Seinfeld.
yeah,
I don't do
yeah.
impersonation. I'm no Caliendo. Who is? No one. Caliendo is. That's the only one who's a Frank. He but Seinfeld, uses his own voice, and now the cow sounds a little bit like sort of the Jewish Borscht Belt comedian that Jerry Seinfeld is imitating when he heightens his own voice.
Even funnier, yeah.
Yeah. So again, you don't have to do a long, drawn out version of it if you don't want to. Like a lot of times you're just trying to heighten it to a real natural place. And for them, it was a quick natural place. For a lot of my bits, because of who I am, it would extend further. But that was my style. That's how I like to do it. But I wasn't a one liner guy. And Hedberg was more of a he did a lot of like smaller bits. But not like Seinfeld. It was more like he wasn't a one liner either. It wasn't like Dangerfield that would do ba-dum. Seinfeld would extend his thing. So yeah, so it really is, and again, that's what you do when you're at an open mic or when you're trying out your new material, is you're experimenting with that part. How long does this go? What I would always do, I would always go one step further than the last laugh. And then I would backtrack when I listened to the recording. That's why it's so important to record your sets, is because you listen. And when did I lose the crowd? When was the crowd sick of hearing about my syrup talking or my waffle talking? Well, right then it was they sound tired of that waffle having a voice. But up until then, they liked it. So then you just backtrack it. Same with my alarm clock bit. Like once I realized where that ending was, you don't add anything after that. I go, right, that there's four punchlines in there. The fifth one sucked. So then you backtrack it. But that's the thing about an open mic, is you have to be willing to suck that fifth time in order to get to that fourth.
That's a good philosophy for those people. You should be pushing yourself where the one line doesn't get a joke. I tell people a similar example when people ask, how many colleges to apply to, and I asked them, "Did you get rejected?" And they said no. And I was like, "Well, then you did the college application process wrong because you didn't apply to the Harvard or the Yale or you didn't see how high you could actually get if you didn't get a rejection, so you didn't do it the
Yeah.
most efficient way."
And then I Yale is my is the joke I didn't get a laugh at. I got to go backtrack once and go to the University of Dayton. Got it. And so
Right.
that's a slam on me. That's I went to University of Dayton, but
God.
graduated cum laude, by the way. But and my diploma is like, he was high the whole time and he was drinking. He was a drunk. Shut up, diploma.
Anthropomorphize.
No one needs to hear from you. You're dusty and you lost your plastic covering, so you're a little yellow. I'm not scared of nothing. I didn't mean it that way. Anyway, sorry.
Good example.
Yeah, right. So you were talking about two other heightening devices.
Contrast. Okay, what's
Yeah.
contrast?
Contrast is great. Contrast is where you're just comparing two different things. You're
Yeah, I'll read my card while you're looking at that up. I say do it this way here and that way there.
right.
I just wrote some examples. This way in New York, this way in Colorado, or this way when you're on this emotion, or that way when you're under this emotion, or this way as a kid and that way as an adult.
Exactly. You do it was that way at the turn of the century, and it's this way now. It's they do it this way in India, but they do it this way in America. So it can be any of those things, but it's always a comparison. And typically it's funny to compare things when you heighten the differences between those two things. And that's the whole point. You're trying to use your comedy lens to make a point of why those things are different. So in the book, I use the idea of Adam Yenser does sexy men's clothing. He says men's bodies are way more disgusting than women's bodies. So right away, that's his premise. Like men, we're big, hairy, and ugly, whereas women are fine, smooth, and gorgeous. And so he said, just look at the sexy outfits people wear. Sexiest thing a woman can wear is lingerie, which is basically nothing at all. Right. Even that kind of gets a little bit of a laugh, a recognition laugh of like, oh, yeah, that's true, kind of a thing. So it's probably gets a little bit of a snicker from the audience. That's not his joke, but that's, sexiest thing a man can wear. So he gave us the one half of the contrast. Sexiest thing a woman can wear, sexiest thing a man can wear. Right. That's the contrast. So sexiest thing a woman can wear, lingerie, where he's wearing nothing at all. Sexiest thing a man can wear, a 3-piece suit. Just layers and layers of material covering every inch of his horrible body. And just to be safe, it's tied around his neck to make sure it doesn't fall off. Heightened, boom, it's great, like a great joke, and that great contrast, because now we're getting to see like, wow, a woman's body must be better looking because we want to see more of it, and the guys, we want to see way less of it. And that's that. And then it's about the attitude that he says it in, and then it's about the timing of how he does it. But it gets a really great laugh. It's a really funny contrast. And we get to laugh at the idea that those two things are different. And then we get to Adam's comedy lens. His uniquely conservative observational takes is my stab at his lens.
Yeah. Again,
whenever you take a stab at someone else's lens, you have to always say, but I could be wrong. That might not be what it is, but that's what, from my observation of his material, that's how it looks. In my first book, I talk about George Carlin. Remember, he does baseball versus football. Football's played on a gridiron. Baseball's played on a field. So now he's got an attitude that he's using. George Carlin is saying football is tough, baseball is for wimps. And so everything he does, football, I'm going to score a touchdown in the end zone. Baseball, I'm running home. So his attitude is that one is tough and one is not. And that's where the contrast begins to get a laugh. And he plays that contrast. If you've ever heard that bit, he does it, like 10 or 12 times he goes into it, because he's a real wordsmith and he likes to really get, like, his bits are really well thought out. Carlin, again, brilliant, just a brilliant, like he's, the godfather of observational comedy. Well, one of the godfathers. Lenny Bruce is the main one, but I digress. But yeah, but that bit is, if you've never heard that bit, you got to listen to that whole bit, because it's just a master class in contrast, because because what he does, what Carlin does with that bit is he finds funny specifics and recognition laughs within his contrast. And that's what you're trying to do always, is combine a bunch of different heightening devices to make your point. And so he the funny specifics are, gridiron, field. Those are funny specifics. And those are also recognition laughs, because I recognize the football gridiron. I recognize the baseball is played on the field. So those are what he does all across the board on that bit. And then the other one, is Chris Rock, does a great contrast. People are actually allergic to food in America. No one is allergic to food in Rwanda. Being fat in America is bad. Being fat anywhere else in the world is admirable. So now he's making a comment on America, and he's making a comment on who we are as a people, how we waste food and how we overeat. And how in elsewhere, and now he uses Rwanda because that's a recognizable place where people are starving. And so because he is a black man, he can make jokes about other people who look like him who are suffering in a way that he's really mocking. He's not mocking Rwanda. He's not mocking people who are starving. He's mocking us for being so fat when there's other people like that who are existing in the world. So he's not punching down. He's punching up at us, fat, rich Americans. And so it's brilliant. And Chris Rock, again, another brilliant comedian who's just constantly churning out new material.
And then you have that
the one I
contrast
used in my act. I talked about
Midwesterners.
Yeah, the people in Midwest are really friendly, and like there's some places where like in the city, whatever, they're like, hey, do you know where the library is? Fuck off, why are you even trying to read? And then in the Midwest, it's like, oh my God, the library, you're a reader. Wonderful. I'll take you there. Get on my back. I'll carry you. And then, like the people in the Midwest are so friendly. They want to help you get to whatever you want to get to. Whereas the people in the big cities are not. So that was my contrast. I was showing, because I was working in Minneapolis when that joke came out, when I wrote that bit. And people in Minneapolis, if you've ever been to Minneapolis, are like some of the friendliest people in the world. Oh my God, you'll need help. And then I said, they blow their help whistle. There's someone that's not from the area that needs our help. Circle up, everybody. We're going to get them to the library. all right, you get him on in your car, you take him, you lend him your library card, and then you teach him how to read in case he doesn't know the big words or whatever. But the idea was that people in the city don't give a shit about you, but people in Minneapolis love you. And then that audience loved it because they were like, he's right, we are that friendly, and it got a big laugh there.
All right, let's hear that bit.
You guys are so friendly, almost to a fault. The Midwest people are so friendly. They get into your business like, good morning, who the fuck are you? And how do you know so much about my morning? Indeed, it was good. Well done, sir. Good morning. God damn it. You're not from here, are you? You should drink our water. It changes you. Y'all chew a lot of gum, that's all I'm saying. I love the friendliness, though. Don't lose that. And that's why, I grew up in the Midwest. I love that. I've lived in New York. I lived in Vegas, Chicago, LA. And boy, there's just nothing better than the Midwest sensibility. People are just nice. You can always tell, too, when you ask for directions. You ever notice that? You ask strangers for directions, tells a lot about them. Like when I lived in New York, people just fuck with me. It's like, hey, do you know where the library is? Yeah! Since I was about 5. Well, enjoy your access to reading. I think I'm gonna go rent a movie. But here, you people, you'll give directions. You care about people. It's funny. Well, you got like help whistles on. You go, hey, do you know where the library is? You guys are like, there's someone that's not from Cincinnati that needs our help. People come running up. What's going on there? Oh, he's not from the Midwest. He needs to know where the library is. Don't worry. It's the Midwest. We'll get you there. It's what we do.
This contrast, like, just working on a bit about how, like people in Colorado are really thin, like the thinnest state, very athletic. My buddy in Salt Lake, very athletic out, and then his family lives in Detroit. So like he goes to the airport in Salt Lake and he's like, oh man, I gotta lose 15 pounds. And then he connects through Denver. And he's like, oh shit, I gotta lose 20 pounds. And then he lands in Detroit and he's like, I'm an Adonis. Like, look.
That's good. That's good. That's
Is
a great
that-
contrast. Yeah. And
Okay.
then you just keep heightening that. You just like all the different places where he realizes that about himself but I mean that's the joke right there. You just did the joke. I mean that's the full joke. And
Does Adonis, is that a line that's too arcane or too people know who
the
Adonis
word
was?
Adonis. Oh, I knew what you're
Yeah,
talking about, but I'm college educated and well read, so I don't know.
from Dayton.
Adonis. You talking about Madonna? Is that who you said? Adonis?
Adonis?
Yeah. But yeah, Adonis, but that could be, sometimes when you do that, and you have a funny specific or a recognition laugh that doesn't get the laugh, you can use that as a launching point for the idea that the audience didn't know who Adonis is. And so you can do a Greek god bit or whatever in order to
Save it.
sort of heighten it. And then you do a callback later to an Adonis again. Now the audience is in on it.
That's really funny.
Boom, now you get the big laugh. And so that's, you take the hit on the first one, so you get the big applause break on the second one. And that's what a skilled comic would do, maybe,
Okay, so what we did, so we contrast, we did anthropomorphize, and let's do cut back too.
And then I have the first kiss. I'm trying to remember what that bit is.
By the time I got married, I was done with dating. That first kiss, I hated it. On the stoop, me and her, mano a womano.
Like that right there, mano a mano is the thing, but I'm with a woman, so I just changed it to mano a womano, and it's like my own word, but they got, it was a chuckle. It's not a big laugh, but it's a chuckle on the way to get my big joke. And my joke is I cut back to my wife and I's first kiss and how awkward was it?
She's just standing there, and usually it's the guy that has to make the first move. Women just stand there to receive, like.
So then now I'm doing the woman. She's just like, like a silly face of her ready to receive the first kiss because it's not her job to do it. this bit is I do like when you do a first kiss, you have to lean in kind of to do it. So there's that awkward moment where you have to go forward, where your neck sort of goes forward, and so I end up being like, "Ah!" I start doing like I'm a chicken. So I like I'm basically heightening the idea that because I'm awkward about my intimate moments, and this is the first one, I look like a chicken when I do it. So there's a real recognition laugh there. That's the heightening device I use there. And I do sort of an exaggerated, funny specific, which is that neck looks like a chicken's neck. And then, it just goes.
But it's normally our job to take our big ass bulky heads 2.5 feet towards yours and stop right on time with our tongue in your mouth. Oh, that'll be work. You gotta open.
Do you have the microphone stand do you have the mic in the stand right now and you're leaning
Yeah,
into the
I'm
mic
using yeah, that's a good point. This is again like when the stand-up stage is very sparse. So you've got a mic stand, a mic, and typically a stool, and maybe a bottle of water or a drink on the stool, and that's it. That's all you got up there. So a lot of comedians use the mic stand, like I've seen them use it as a metal detector. I've seen them use it as a gun. They use it as a cane. They use it as a lever that they as a device. What I did is I put the mic in the mic stand, and I pretended that was her. That was the girl. So I'm like lunging forward towards the mic, and as if she is that mic. So now in their mind, they're watching my first kiss with her.
There's always a voice in my head putting pressure on me. 14 seconds until kiss time, Mr. Lucas. Prepare to lunge, prepare to fail. 13 seconds and counting. Don't forget, you ate garlic. 12, 11. And then I just have to blurt it out. I had a really good time. I want to go. Abandon the mission. She thinks you're a chicken. Get out. Get out. This is what I would have done to your face. You're making out with the screen door. Get out. She's calling 911. Okay, I'll call you. You'll screen it. I laid you an egg. Enjoy breakfast. Driving home like an idiot. That went pretty well. That was all right, man.
So that was sort of my style, was I would just create a moment and then I would heighten it to the point of ridiculousness, and then I would just yes and the fact that, well, I guess I'm a chicken now, and then I'm but really what the statement I'm making is I'm not very good at intimate moments. How bad is he? He's so bad that he physically headbutts her, is a chicken. He has a Hal voice that has to that's correcting him and all that stuff. So yeah.
And what is the definition of a cut back to? Do you have that?
A cut back to is when you create a scenario that may have existed prior to the setup. I say try and imagine a situation that might have existed any time before the present that somehow affects the setup. Maybe this scenario caused the setup, or perhaps it just explains why the setup exists. And so, yeah, you're basically, I said it can be a conversation, an activity, an idea, or any situation, so long as it somehow connects to the setup's past history. So yeah, it like a lot of times it explains something that you're explaining now, and it sort of gives a clear meaning to it. Sometimes it heightens a thing that you're talking about. Like in that case, it was explaining my own nervousness.
When you said cut back to, I immediately thought to the Gaffigan bit where he does about a hot pocket, and he does the bit about how did they come up with that jingle.
Yeah.
And like he instantly sends you back to like the
Right.
ad marketing office that says like, what do you think happened? How did they work? How long did they work on that jingle? That's a cutback, right?
Yeah, and that's a very typical cutback. Cutback to the marketing genius that came up with that crazy idea. That's like a real kind of a hack cut back to. But because Gaffigan does it, it's always brilliant, and he comes up with a different twist on something that, even if it's something that a lot of other comics have done, Gaffigan is so damn brilliant. It like he finds an original take on that. I have actually funny in the book I use a cutback to, which is I use the one that he does about he says, I'm sure most of you showered. There's probably one or two weirdos out there that took a bath. How much free time do you have on your hands? What are you taking a break from ruling ancient Egypt? I don't have anything to do and I'll never have anything to do. So I'll just sit in a pool of my own filth. Oh, luxury. So, he's cutting back to, that moment of the taking of the bath and then heightening it by saying it's as if he's the king of Egypt or whatever. So to me yeah, but the Hot Pocket one is another one like that. And then let's see, let me just look at the here's a couple examples. Jerry Seinfeld describing seedless watermelons. He cuts back to when the watermelon scientist had the ideas. Again, what was the marketing genius that came up with it? Like so then he brings you back to that moment when they were thinking about, there's too much. We got to get rid of the. And then so he's using a recognition laugh, which is we have to spit seeds, and then he makes the noise, and that's what gets that laugh. And then Chris Rock does a cutback to when he does on the Bible's view on pork. The pork rule was made way back when there were no refrigerators, and a pork chop could kill you. So he does a cutback to the original reason why there's no pork allowed in that in the Bible. So yeah, cut back to is great because it's an act out. It's another excuse to do an act out, and act outs are fun. Act outs are like, I make a point in a statement. Now cut back to that time when that was first invented or when that first happened or the reason why that's true now, and it's a real fun way to make that point. So yeah, and it's funny. Like anytime you watch a comedian give a laugh, you can always trace back the heightening devices they're using, and then their lens, the lens that they use.